Thanks for coming, everybody, to this slightly outside of our normal scheduling meeting. I don't really have anything in particular. As you can see, I think we just need to discuss a couple of things moving forward in terms of our role and involvement in some of the big projects going on. So that's what I was hoping we can discuss today. So, but first and foremost, Sheila, thank you very much for doing the minutes. Has everybody had a chance to review the minutes? Does anybody have any changes or anything to the minutes that Sheila sent out? Anyone?
You want me? I move we accept the minutes.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, so they're approved. Great, thanks, Andy. So I thought it made sense to just talk a little bit about the joint meeting that we had, what was that, on June 19th, so a little bit more than 3 weeks ago, actually. I thought that meeting went well. I was glad that we were asked to participate. And thank you, everybody, for your comments. It also occurred to me, I'm thinking more and more that it seems like an uphill battle to get what we want, which is a physical separate bike lanes. But curious to hear what your takeaways were. It does seem like it just seems like a difficult project in terms of there's a lot of competing interests and not a lot of room on Mount Auburn. But I'm curious to hear what other folks thought as far as that.
I thought they were, from the engineering side, I thought they seemed increasingly receptive to the idea. I think, they certainly had heard what we had to say and seemed open to exploring alternatives.
Yeah, agree with that.
I guess what I'd like to see our committee do is come to more agreement amongst each other on the design alternatives that were presented. I, for one, I think some of us are thinking that it will be more of a raised, off-street bike path, and some of us might be just looking to have it on street and, with some sort of post protecting it.
The bollards.
Yeah, that's more where I was coming from with it.
That you think the bollards was something that we
Well, I think they could be cheaper and more feasible, and not necessarily as permanent or expensive to implement. I'm not necessarily opposed to a raised path, but I think, as some people have alluded to, there are examples around the area where you have a raised bike path, up off the street, and they're not particularly well implemented, like on Concord Ave, where you have all these elevation changes, and I don't see that as necessarily an example of best design practices.
And it would seem like that would happen. I got the sense in Mount Auburn, one of the issues is all the driveways, I guess, and also all the cross streets. So it's not like you get that nice straight shot of raised level bike path. I think you'd have a lot of that.
So what the Mass DOT design guide calls for raised paths is for it to actually be a level surface, and for cars entering and exiting driveways, they would actually go over the path.
So
it would be like a speed bump in a little bit. That's actually what the guidance calls for.
Makes sense.
And for driveways, what about for cross streets?
I think for streets it would be level.
Yeah.
It would be flush with the street.
Oh, that's interesting.
You mean so someone turning in their driveway has to go?
Yeah.
Well, that's our
But that's
standard.
what you have to do
That's the
anyway
standard.
now. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the standard. Concord Avenue, the reason that they had it that way, I think, on the north side is because there were so many different types of driveways, and some of them are very large, and there was a lot of industrial use still when they built it. So that corridor is, it's somewhat unique, and it's also a local project, so they can choose to not follow the state requirements. That's what I was saying at the meeting is that this is a state-funded project, so there are certain requirements versus when you look at local projects and point your finger to them, like in, like on Concord Avenue.
Actually, I was really talking about this.
Are there minimum requirements? Because this is like a big street thing and it's a state thing, is then, because I know you were saying it seems like an uphill battle, but if there's minimum requirements, that's where we're at least starting from. Is there?
So that's what the presentation provided, was the minimums and maximums.
Okay.
And
So
then, and I think that in this case, they looked at the minimums for everything to see if it could even fit. But-
So the, like, unprotected, i.e. on the inside of the cars, we can go through that whole inside-outside thing, but like, inside of the track, of the parked cars, that would be the minimum of the bike lane there.
That actually, that was wider. I think that was the one where they could accommodate a more generous bike lane.
Yeah, I actually thought the joint
Yeah.
meeting was informative as well. There are some things that I didn't quite appreciate. For example, the bike lane on the inside of the parked cars, between the parked cars and the curb. I guess I hadn't appreciated just how much that affects visibility of, for folks crossing the street, for example.
I'm just saying, we're not rolling all the way back to Sharrows, right?
No.
Okay.
Well,
I'm just trying to.
Sharrows were never, I mean, for the main part of the
I'm just trying to
corridor.
make sure where we're arguing, because it seems like
Well,
you're right. I
that's-
think
yeah, I think
that
that's Sam's point, right? Is we want to. I mean, I think we have a point that we're arguing right now, which is we wanted separate,
Yeah, this is
physically
us.
separate. Hey.
Hey, I was wondering where we were.
Oh.
Hey, Janet, how are you? Good. Okay. Pull up. Pull up the chair. Oops. Come on, Janet.
Which was, we were just talking about Mount Auburn, and one of the things we're talking about is sort of making sure that we as a committee have a unified position that we're kind of advocating for. And I thought, largely because of Sam's excellent letter that he drafted, that called for, when we as a committee wants to see physically separate bike paths. And I thought that presented that unified position of our committee, and also was heard loud and clear by the engineer and other folks involved in the design, which I think is exactly what we want to do. And so that's, I think, part of what we're saying is, no, just having a striped line is not going to get it done.
I just don't want to be in a situation where we're with Common Street where like we had a bike lane and it disappeared, and then like 3 years down the line, and it's just like, oh, it went. I just didn't want. I wanted to make sure we're at least at a minimum point to work from. But then we can decide exactly what that. So there's a bike lane, whether it's inside the car protected by removable bollards, outside the cars, which then runs into the issue of visibility,
Right.
or is fully separate, which seems to be the three options we talked about. As long as we just decided between those three options, that's
See,
it.
I think we need to be really, because now that we've had that meeting and I've been going to and fro on the street, there's the two different factors. There's the north side of the street where there's no parking for the most part, except during funerals. And then there's the south side of the street where there's parking. And I think there's going to have to be two different ways of dealing with it. Because I was saying, the bollards question, well then how do you get into the parking spaces if you're outside the cars? If you choose to go inside the cars, then the question becomes visibility to me, because there are so many driveways and there are so many cross things. And I'm thinking like around uncommon grounds, and the area around my office. So I think we need to also be really clear that we're talking about the two different aspects of things. So that we be clear that we know ourselves. It's not one thing or the other because of the two different.
That makes sense.
Who actually bikes on Mount Auburn?
Oh, I have.
I mean,
I
have,
have, will.
but I don't.
Isn't it?
And I try not to.
I know, but I have to, so.
Is that right
I
though?
was-
Sheila, do you, I mean,
bike there almost every day.
But you're coming from out of town, right, and then
Yeah.
stopping in Coolidge, so you're not using it, are you using it to get from Coolidge Square to, say, Watertown Square?
Sometimes,
Yeah.
yeah.
And so when you need to go from Coolidge Square to Watertown Square, would you go on Mount Auburn, or would you?
As long as it's not rush hour, I do.
And so when you-
But once I get close to Watertown Square, I just go to the square.
Mhm.
But, yeah,
And if it's rush hour, what do you do? Do you like go?
I have this back road, I have this thing where I go behind and near the Arsenal and over to North Beacon Street and cut through the area around, yeah.
Because I don't ride on Mount Auburn. A big part of the reason is traffic, and also because the condition of the road is so bad. And particularly if it's wet, you can't tell whether it's a 1-inch
Yeah.
divot or a
Or a
6-inch
huge
divot that's going to send you over the
Yeah.
handlebars. It's just not worth it.
And I just want to add to Coolidge Square, because that was always a different, we started talking about that a long time ago. And then they just sort of added it in to Mount Auburn Street. But everybody's sort of working to make it very different, a real sort of a place where bicycles and people and cars going very slowly.
Yeah, I mean, it desperately needs to happen because people drive way too fast. Way too fast. It's like the light goes off near, 7-Eleven, and it's like somebody's did the starting gun at Churchill Brown.
Yeah, it's awful. It's not good for the businesses, I don't think.
No, it isn't.
I think there was some pushback, in particular that woman who, the florist,
Cast.
Yeah.
was saying that, everybody trying to get rid of cars is going to kill her business. And
She
Yeah, she
has
said-
side streets.
yeah, she clearly has a lot of credibility as somebody who runs a business in the area, but I just don't agree.
Well,
in
the
terms
other
of-
reality is outside her store, there's only like 2 parking spaces on Mount Auburn Street,
Right.
so.
And it's also,
Yes,
They keep
they
moving
need
because
parking,
They keep
but-
changing bus thing. I was the only one that wasn't there, and so I read very carefully everything. So you feel like they really heard you about what you wanted for separate bike lanes?
I mean, I don't know that I think they heard, they heard our points in terms of like justifying looking into it more. I don't think we really settled on an alternative, design alternative.
The one thing I liked was it seemed like they were prepared with answers, that they had considered those options, they had done their homework, so it wasn't new to them, so.
Well, they hadn't really considered the posts.
Yeah,
Well,
but they listened.
I mean, they didn't present that as an alternative.
I think they
But-
definitely recognized that they think of the December meeting as really having been kind of a disaster for the project. And the big reason that they think of it as being such a disaster is people were upset and people didn't feel like they'd been heard. And so I think
Well, they hired a PR firm, right?
Yeah, right, exactly. And so I think they're not going to make that mistake again. They are going to give us an opportunity to be heard. And so doing things like the letter that Sam drafted, that we sent as a committee, that we voted on and considered and sent as a committee, is going to be heard. And so that's terrific, but it also means that if we are going to be heard, we need to make sure that our advocacy is such that it's acted upon.
Well, to your point, though, is if we can come up with sort of a cohesive
Yes.
solution, that a consensus, is step number 2 to get public support behind. Is there some way we can get public support behind it,
Yeah, it's a good.
rather than just us?
Right.
Probably get, I'm not sure how.
Well,
I mean,
I mean, the Fair on the Square is coming up in September, and we can do a bunch of educating about what bike lanes on Mount Auburn Street are about.
Probably get people to sign somehow, or
I think
But
it
I
would
think
be.
Sam's point is good. We really need to know what that is.
I agree. That's step
We
1.
need to spend some time.
Once we have that, then I think then we can go out and solicit
Yeah,
others.
yeah,
Well, I'm sure you said step 1 is what? Having our own.
Consensus of
Yeah.
where
yeah.
we should go.
Having,
Well, I think we did get.
One thing I felt like was lacking from that meeting, and maybe it was designed that way, were pedestrian accommodations other than the sidewalk. They didn't go into bump outs for crosswalks, where there might be lights and that kind of thing, and I feel like that can affect the lanes and the bike lanes and the designs. We touched upon this before, I think, bump outs do affect
that's correct.
the bike lanes, and then I think we'll get a lot of public consensus behind a plan that also includes pedestrian, like improved crosswalks and stuff. Just because there are a lot of pedestrians, especially around the commercial districts, like
Especially
Village
in
Square
Village,
and
yeah.
stuff.
And that's where one area where, we as a committee, I think we're pretty heavy on bike advocacy, but maybe less so on pedestrian advocacy, but.
What about buses?
Yeah, I was gonna say
I mean, that
the
to me
pedestrians
was
also go to every
missing.
bus stop.
Right, yeah, that's very
But
funny.
So-
they
Say it again.
said they're gonna be
I didn't hear what
doing.
Gideon said.
Oh, the pedestrians actually are not just in the retail areas because the buses are carrying, a lot of pedestrians. There's a lot of pedestrians on many stops along the whole corridor.
That's true on the corridor, but I do think that one of the biggest impact things that could happen is changing, for example, the speed and the sort of pedestrian layout of Coolidge. That's a gathering point. That's one of our spots that we as a town should be proud of, and right now it's not what it could be.
Well, for me, I think that as we look at the solution, one thing I'd like to know more about is, and I brought it up during the meeting, is the interaction with the buses, how that's going to look like, both for pedestrians and bikes. Because to be honest with you, I think that in that corridor, transit's really important. And I think we really have to make sure that we don't have a negative impact on transit.
Yeah.
I
And
think
it's so hard to get the team to do anything. I mean,
Oh,
to
that's
do
true.
different height, smaller, but longer. I mean, there's so many things.
There's so much red tape to get them to change anything.
They won't do anything.
Yeah.
But, I mean, it's something like 5,000, is that bike rides? And 17,000 motor vehicles, but I think by 2025, it's going to be reversed. It's going to be 5,000 cars and 17,000 bicycles and transit. If we have to pay attention to that.
I said the pedestrian stuff, I agree, but there was just a black box because they said pedestrian stuff will come up junction by junction. They haven't even got to that point. They're just thinking overall thought of the streetscape. And so who knows which direction that's going to go, because they said they couldn't tell us because it would be based on bit by bit.
They had done it all with the bike and the bump outs all along the corridor, if you look at their older plans. And that takes a lot of work to create that for every, so they wanted to get the bicycle component figured out so that they can move forward with the pedestrian accommodation.
I don't know if it's going to be a good thing or a bad thing.
Yeah.
It just was a black box at that meeting.
I agree, but it also means that I wonder if once we decide on a consensus for a bike plan, then the pedestrian plan almost starts to interrupt it based on the individual crossings and stuff, and I do worry that all of a sudden this bike plan that we've all agreed on becomes scattered, like you said, or whoever said on Concord Ave, where there's a bike lane and then it's gone and then,
Right, and then it comes back.
Right, it needs to be, we have to pay attention to make sure the bike plan is consistent.
Yeah, so moving forward, I'm not,
One other thing, in terms of a pedestrian, perhaps one of the things I'd like for us to advocate for are pedestrian lights that are more pedestrian useful. And by that I mean, some of the lights that I saw in Europe, they give you a countdown until how long it'll be before the light changes so that the pedestrian light comes on, so you know that the countdown says, and it's counting down like from 45, so 45, 44, 40, you know that your turn to go across the street is coming. And this is just a countdown clock. This is not anything fancy. It's all it is a countdown clock. Just like we have a countdown clock to get people across the street when the walk symbol comes on, there's a countdown clock that tells people how long they're going to wait for. And the other part is that I want to make sure that the lights give people more time to get across, especially in the shopping districts, because people need a little more time. They're often carrying packages or kids or, and you need a little more time to get from one side to the other, not just 10 seconds,
Well, I have a question. Has anybody used the bike track on Western Ave in Cambridge?
I used it once.
I'm very impressed with that, not only with the separated bike lane, and I can't remember how they handle going across the driveways. I can't remember if it dips or not.
Mostly grazed.
But the other piece is it's well on its way to a protected intersection, because when you come to the intersections, when you get a pedestrian light, you also get a bike light.
Yes, I want to see more bike, I want to see bike lights.
I think Western Ave might be a good example of moving towards protected intersections.
So one thing that's different about, I'm not trying to be argumentative, but the one thing that's different about Western Ave is it's a one-way, which makes it, we actually tried to do bike lights on Arsenal and the engineers when it was not safe. There's actually
It's a bike
training.
light.
It's so the bikes get their own light
Yeah.
for green.
Oh, so they can go a little bit ahead of traffic a little bit.
No, so if you're on your own, so it's a light on your little road,
Yeah,
In your little bike lane.
and so it's your light
Yeah.
that's smaller and it has.
How does it differ from the lights? the
So,
timing of the
so
lights
what
on
happens
cars?
is when you're on Western Ave, you come to an intersection, the light turns red. The first thing, and it really is a protected intersection because when the bikes stop, they're ahead of the cars.
Yeah.
So you have a head start on the cars. The other thing is when the pedestrian light turns on,
Which is
the bike
almost
light
in
turns on,
advance.
the cars are held back.
I'm sorry, so the,
So when the light's about to turn green, the pedestrian light comes on with the bike light. So
I'm
bikes and
surprised
pedestrians
they
can
let that
proceed,
happen.
then
It's an
the car light
LPS.
comes on.
Most
Yeah.
Cambridge
So it
is
kind
LPS.
of keeps cars from doing the right hook.
Most of the area over, there's like
At the intersection.
I haven't driven, yeah, I haven't
They-
biked there in a while.
Yeah, it's.
I heard mixed reviews about it at first, though. I heard that there were some folks who didn't like it. Does anybody else hear that?
There's a lot of people using it the wrong way.
I mean, cyclists who don't like it. I mean, you're always gonna get pushback from drivers.
Talked to a friend who's a very fit cyclist who goes very fast and he prefers to actually bike in the traffic lane because he's going that fast. He doesn't want to be interrupted by curbs and pedestrians doing unpredictable things.
Yeah, pedestrians tend to like blocking those lanes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think you'd get less of that if it was actually on the street.
It's a pretty dense area too, so you gotta think, it's not an area where you're gonna be able to fly on your bike. You know, you're gonna be going.
you're going to be on the road if you're flying on your bike.
They always have that option.
In terms of like advocacy moving forward, obviously it's important for us to have a consensus as a committee of what we want, what position we want to take. But in terms of, does anybody have any thoughts on how do we generate the kind of public support that we'll need? Because again, if the town and the planners are making a concerted effort to listen to us, you know, how do we make it so that being heard, that we're actually likely to get the kind of changes that we want?
I suggest, like, I think Fair on the Square is a good place for us to start. And I think it's just, let's just start with educating people about bike lanes.
Okay.
And talk about the project, because they haven't come up with a firm design yet. So for us to say, this is what we want to see and advocate for it, might not be the way to do it. But if we can start educating people about the bike lanes, period.
The need for
and
bike lanes,
bicyclists
yeah.
and the need for it, you know, maybe we'll get out of this whole thing where people
How-
don't understand why.
So how
we're
can we do
doing
that? Because
this.
actually Fair on the Square is right on top of us. 'Cause
Yes.
we're gonna have the August meeting, we'll have the September meeting, and then we'll have Fair on the Square. Soon after the September meeting, because if I remember correctly, it's like Fair on the Square is like middle.
No, it's like the
Or
third
20th September.
weekend.
It's usually
right?
around the 20-something.
Yeah, it's in the
23rd,
20-something.
24th or something.
I think I know what you mean, Sheila.
So what I'm thinking of is things like, okay, what if we do posters, a couple of posters that talk about Mount Auburn Street bike lanes and, you know, talk, and some information like we've had of, you know, some things from the handout from the thing they
You know,
did
something that
and
would
what
be,
they've done.
yeah, I agree.
So that
Yeah.
there'd be things for people to look at so we can engage people around.
It's something that would be interesting for people, because, you know, we get a lot of people who are already, you know, preaching to the choir, who are already,
Yeah.
you know, but if you get something that has interesting facts that people might not know about bike lanes, then we might be able to discuss them more. I think some of the facts that Sam had mentioned, you know, I forget, but the number of cyclists who will actually ride if they don't have a separate bike, you know, path, that's a compelling fact.
Is there a possibility that, I mean, people in Watertown are really getting anxious about traffic with all the development? Could we tie a message somehow with, you're worried
Making
about
it
traffic,
safe to
here's what
walk.
we're doing?
Yeah.
So,
This makes it slows down traffic, it becomes a way safer to ride your bike to Coolidge
you
Square.
talk to anybody and they're all
Yeah.
worried about the
Right.
traffic.
The focus on
So-
slowing down,
Slowing
why
down.
that works.
Is that a thing we want to focus
Well,
on?
not
Are
just
people going to be
like-
concerned that traffic is going to become blocked because we've narrowed their
Well,
streets
that's
with
what-
bike
No,
lanes?
no, no, I think the
That's
other way, with all the
education.
development,
That's
with all the development, people are worried about that.
Just
So,
the
like,
amount of traffic.
right,
So if we, I guess maybe we could do some analysis of if we increase the commuter mode share for bikes by X amount, it would remove X number of cars from the road and,
Yeah.
reduce the
There's
growth
been-
of traffic.
There's some
Yeah,
great
that's what I would-
pictures.
that's the way I would
MIT's
go.
One of MIT's labs does, they do transit analysis stuff, and they have some pretty cool images that show what a street looks like when you've got one person in each car and you take away the car carcass. And then you see the space on the street of like all these little
they
dots
rode
with all this
on
space
transit.
versus if they're on transit versus bike
Yeah.
versus so on.
Plus,
So
if
they're
it's like
pretty-
50 people.
So can we, so
How about
Some pretty,
having a
and I'm
video?
sure we can get those images.
where will we do a video though?
I don't
in the
know.
square?
I mean,
No,
but,
video
I
is
have
hard
this
to-
video I sent to a couple of people, I'll send it to all of you from Copenhagen about different kinds of, I mean, it's so graphic.
Oh, you should send it to Sam, you should throw it on the Facebook page.
I should.
Yeah, definitely.
But so how, so for
But what if
content,
we had something there?
How do we project
I
that?
don't know.
That's-
I mean,
that gets way
I don't know how to-
so we're talking about benefits of bikes and and other means of transportation on traffic. That would be the importance of bike lanes, in terms of physical separated bike lanes, in terms of encouraging more people to bike. And then and then I actually added this, we were talking about stuff, just the importance of dedicated bike paths in terms of things like, and I'm talking about these are content for Fair and the Square. I think we want to remind people about the community path behind Target, or the Greenway, excuse me, not to the community path, the Greenway by Target, and how it's going to continue to fresh pond and get people
Yes.
excited about that.
But it's gonna happen in September.
It's gonna be
They
good.
have to have a designer, so we'll have information.
Yeah.
So just, so I looked up the fair, just so you guys know, it
Yeah.
appears to be September 30th from 10 to 4.
Oh, geez,
Great.
okay.
But we still only have 2 meetings between now
Yeah.
and then.
But I just wanted to let you know so you can put it in your...
Thanks.
Yeah, we did put it on the calendar.
So
But I think-
Okay.
So
It might be good at,
So, for next meeting, can we think, Sheila and anybody else, can we start thinking about content, gathering content? And so we can then in August think about, oh, here, this is some good content, and then maybe between August and September, kind of figure out how we're gonna hand it out or display it or whatever.
Yeah, so-
Sorry, can I raise a caution?
Yeah, I'm sorry, you are.
My name is Daniel Pritchard. I lived here not too long ago last year. I bike
It's
regularly to work.
It's
in
actually,
Cambridge.
it's video, it's.
I would caution against
shots from.
rolling out a campaign that's not solid
Yeah.
enough. That's not
Can you
firm
get
enough.
that?
Yeah.
Last thing you want to
wait,
say.
wait, I just
Raise vague.
can we, we can't hear you.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, go on. Dan Pritchard was just, is a new resident, was just talking about the importance, if we're gonna do any kind of campaign, that we have.
Yeah, I mean, I work in PR, marketing, and communications. I think if you raise vague concerns, the vast majority of people drive or take the bus, they will imagine worst-case scenario. They will not give bicyclists the benefit of the doubt. That is my universal experience of everyone else and bicyclists.
Yeah, so I
Yeah.
think it might be good at that fair in the square if we can present our preferred design alternative and get people's feedback on it, or
I agree
at
with-
least
I agree with that.
use it as a
Yeah.
conversation.
Even if there's a generalized study by DUSP at MIT, the Department of Urban Studies and Planning, that says when you introduce bike lanes, traffic gets better. I mean, I don't know that that exists, but if something like that existed, a third party that eases people's concerns and also does double duty as addressing our desires, that would be optimal.
Yeah,
I think.
Actually, and I'm sorry, that's what I meant when I said coming up with content. It was not us coming up with content. Let's find a credible source that has exactly that. That studies, and it's got to be out there, that's done in a way that's kind of handy and accessible. But again, I think it should be, I don't want to use the word provocative too much, but something that, somebody who might not be already in the camp or supportive of cyclists, who might walk by and say, wait a minute, that can't be true. Is it really, is that really going to help traffic? And read it and hopefully be informed and hopefully debate.
So
Because
Ethan, so if all of us kind of do our research, we find something, where should we direct it?
Send it to me.
Okay.
yeah, we'll say, and then bring it, and then at the next meeting, we can start looking at it. So then if we can look at it at the next meeting, and then between August and September, kind of refine it, and then between the September meeting and September 30th, which is fair on the square, actually finalize it and copy it and do
So
all that.
let's try to, so have things maybe for the August meeting.
A
Yes.
lot of people who come are families, and they won't
You
get
can send it to me, well, at least
So,
things
that's
before the
another-
August meeting.
No, I mean, we've been giving out the helmets, so we have people who come by, but again, it's nice to have supporters, and it's nice to get people to sign up and be on the list, but I think we also want to, people in Watertown are concerned. There's a lot of development
Yes.
going on, there's going to be a lot more traffic, and are you crazy? You're telling me you want to have, more, less room for cars? And yes, we do, and here's
Yeah.
why. That's what I want.
I think it's important to, and if you're trying to build support at Feminist Square, right from the beginning, tie it in with improved conditions for pedestrians. I think there are probably more pedestrians. They might not walk as far. There are more pedestrians, and and in fact, also tie that in with the fact that improved pedestrian conditions are improved businesses.
Yeah.
Once you have more pedestrians, you have more people walking into the flower shop. But
Let's remember that every bicyclist is also a pedestrian.
right.
Yes.
So if there's bike parking, then they walk into the store.
But to just right from the beginning, because you don't want to. Basically, you don't want to split the population into drivers versus bikers versus pedestrians. You want people to see common interests.
Didn't I send you an article that talked about the business impact of the post on the Facebook page?
Did I not do that?
I keep sending, no, I can't remember if I
I think
sent
that, I've seen articles about that, it does have a pop up. There's lots of interesting articles about bike paths or bike-friendly accommodations having the opposite effect of what people thought. I think one of the, for example, bike paths, when they do the rails to trails, there's a lot of folks who really didn't want that. They thought it would be terrible to have that go through their backyard, and it turns out to be wonderful, and property values have gone up. So that's for Fair in the Square. So
Well, I was thinking, this might not be practical, but another opportunity to reach out is the farmer's market, but that's during the day on Thursday, so that's tough.
Just a good point, I just wanted to let you know, since you mentioned the farmer's market. Stephanie gave me a little report that she was wondering if the bike ped wanted to come to the farmer's market. She gave me dates of August 10th, September 7th, or October 5th as potential openings that are also on the same day that Landry's Bike is there doing bike tune-ups.
So say the
And-
days again?
The 10th of August,
Yeah.
September 7th, or October 5th. And so we have a community table there. And those are the dates that Landry's is there. There's other dates probably that might be available still. And she said potentially you could try to coordinate that with like a bike ride. Like a bike ride, maybe after when the farmer's market's
if we do
wrapping
a
up.
farmer's market table, it'll probably be very similar to whatever advocacy or awareness we do at Fair in the Square. So I would probably want to do it closer to Fair in the Square because we wouldn't really have anything right now. We can also do bike helmet giveaway.
Right, that's what I was.
But that helmet giveaway, I'd like to use the helmet giveaway as an opportunity to give away helmets, but also to bring people in and jump in so that we can pass out that kind of stuff. So let's think about those
So as far as
Yeah,
the farmer's
I don't
market,
know.
just if you want to
Yeah, I'll coordinate
coordinate
with
with
Stephanie.
Stephanie.
I don't think it's going to be, August 10th seems a little bit too soon.
Yeah. There was a date later in October, but I said it seemed a little too late.
Yeah.
It
Well,
was like the end of October.
so yeah, I agree, Andy, that the farmer's market's a good opportunity for that. We should be doing
Because
that.
we did it a couple years ago.
Yeah,
That was a good response, I thought.
for sure.
Yeah.
It's just tough because it's Saturday, it's Thursday from like 2 to
Right. 6.
6.
And it's not as crazy as Fair on the Square. You can focus on people a little more.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I think we should definitely do it. It's just a question of when, I guess.
Well, if we did it the 5th of October, that would be after.
Yeah.
I don't think that's the same audience.
I don't think it is the same audience. That's why I think it would make sense to do it, because it would be the same effort involved. It would probably. Another thing is, we've been putting stuff up on the Facebook page. Guys, check the Facebook page and thumbs up and do all that stuff. Another thing that occurs to me though is the Watertown tab and the, what's the other Watertown paper?
Watertown News.
Yeah, the Watertown News. We should be commenting on articles. There are some there's some real cranks, and then there's also some, thoughtful people who write thoughtful things. I often see the name Joseph Lewandowski.
Oh, Joe.
You can do it as private citizens,
Yeah.
you can't do it as...
Yeah, I just wanted to point out that if you wanted to write a comment to the
Who have to be as
newspaper,
private citizens.
either as private citizens or you take it and put it on the agenda, talk about it, and then
Right.
formally vote on it.
Yeah, but just because we're on the committee, that doesn't mean we're not private
Can you
citizens.
respond as a private citizen and mention that you're on the bike?
You actually have to say, I'm on the bike ped committee, but I am
Speaking.
specifically speaking as a
Private citizen.
private citizen. And it's not.
We should do that. I think, identifying yourself as being on the committee, it's part of who
Raises
you are.
awareness of the
Yeah.
committee too.
Yeah. But I speak as a private citizen. I think that's important to clarify. You're not speaking on the committee, but that's sort of, right. But I think, if there's any articles that have to do with, anything that you feel strongly about, but particularly if it relates to cycling or pedestrians, it's good to get to show the support. Because I think it does have a tendency to pick up momentum one way or the other, depending on how we work on it. So those are all different ways to kind of,
Yeah, in fact, there's research that shows that if the first comment is positive on an article, the thread that goes from there tends to be positive.
Oh, is that right?
If it's negative, it goes downhill.
I wonder
There
how
was
that
just an
study
article-
relates to articles about cyclists though, because I gotta say, the cyclist articles, people are real, it really brings out very polarizing groups, or polarized groups, I guess. People tend to feel really strongly one way or the other.
Gotta keep educating. Be the first comment, be positive.
So in terms
That's
of
really-
coming to consensus, how do we do that? In terms of what the solution should look like?
Yeah.
We could
Well-
start reaching out to other knowledgeable people on stuff like movable streets or mass bike or other resources, just to get some other input.
Well, isn't that, particularly for Mount Auburn, that's what really struck me. I think somebody even said it at the meeting, I forget, said, I'm glad I'm not a planner, meaning it's much easier to identify the problems on Mount Auburn Street than it is to come up with a solution. It's very tough. There's a lot of competing interests, in terms of cars, bikes, pedestrians, buses, and then with the limited space that's there.
Mount Auburn's doing a lot of work.
Yeah, it's true everywhere. But what I mean is it's hard to come up with a consensus of what's the best thing to do. And that's what my takeaway from that meeting was. There's an expression like the best, the hallmark of a compromise is that nobody's happy. I got the sense that Mount Auburn's, it's going to be a compromise, I think. There's no way they're going to make everybody happy with whatever they come up with for Mount Auburn.
That's ultimately a political question, which users of the road do we give the most space to, or what proportion, who gets what proportion of the roadway? And there's not enough space for everybody, so you have to make a
And who
fair
does?
calculation.
That's a good point.
That's a good
The
point.
most people or loudest voice?
I think in this corridor, transit's really important, but I don't think there's anybody advocating for transit.
You mentioned Joe Lewandowski.
Yeah, Joe is,
And the transportation committee.
The entire
Are
transportation
desperately-
advocacy
Okay.
group.
What we really, really need
Is what?
is a subway. Go underneath.
Wow.
It seems to me that we maybe not necessarily the political argument sewed up. We seem to have the technocratic argument sewed up. It seems, I don't know. If in terms of us pushing forward our agenda, yeah, sure. Maybe we're not going to necessarily want to get into a political battle with car drivers, right? Who maybe have more swing in terms of being able to demand space. But we've all sat here tonight and talked about the fact that cars reduce congestion, have public health benefits, have business benefits. So I don't like you're right. I think it's a political question, but I think we have a very strong technical argument to make, and I don't think that's lost on people.
Well, because
I don't
they've
think
shown us that
necessarily-
there is extra roadway space,
Right.
Yeah.
that, it's not all needed for cars. So we have, one lane of traffic that can be converted into bike space.
If
So
you
maybe-
go with the premise that our consultants have made that there is that extra lane, but there is still a substantial population in the community that isn't convinced.
Right.
Yeah.
Which is.
Like I
But
said,
at
Let's
least,
educate them
the
about
experts
it.
have spoken and said that there is that space.
But you're questioning one component of what the experts are, so that's the other side of it. Just, when you start to look at the plans that were drawn and you say, well, we should do more, then the other side is also saying we should do the other direction.
Well, I
So
think
that-
Sam said it pretty well. I mean, I was making the point that we're not going to make everybody happy, but so then it becomes a question of, well, who are you going to prioritize? And part of who you're going to prioritize, there's obviously political reasons why you might. More people are supporting one thing, and then there's public policy reasons why you might, and then there's on the public policy front, a lot of it comes down to education. As you say, here are the reasons why you should do this. And as you say, the health benefits is on the one hand, but there's also, actually, it won't be as bad for traffic as you might think, and here's why.
Well, to that point, Gideon, just to kind of level set, it seems to be a long time ago. Maybe I'm just imagining this, but I think I went to a meeting where they had done, they were talking about results of a traffic study that reducing the number of lanes would not impact the throughput.
Yeah, that was the very basis of why they started to go down this path.
Right.
But I think it, like everything else, it was a long time ago. And so if you're basing your, for lack of a better word, PR campaign on this premise, people don't have that at the tip of their tongues anymore. So that very basis, which is what I think
We'll have one at their times.
the rationale for why.
Well, no, you're saying the study has become old.
Well,
Well, it's not invalid.
No,
No, you're
no,
just
but
saying-
I'm saying it's no longer, it's not part of the conversation right now, but because we're revisiting everything else, as a committee, you need to talk about it again. You can't just ignore that basis. You
So
have to
I'm-
say, this is great, they did a study and it did these things.
You're saying we need to go back to the original study about
Okay.
throughput on the amount of traffic.
And make sure people understand
And make
that.
sure people understand.
That's what I'm talking about that all the time to people.
You're saying, you're having
That's how
a
it works.
conversation over and over, you want people to say, hey, look, we've done a study, and even if we reduce it by, one lane, the study supports,
I'm describing how Mount Auburn could work with 3 lanes, with 2 lanes, 2-3 lanes, and
how's that
turn
going?
it.
It's not going well.
Well, I'm just thinking, that
I
could,
think it's hard for people to believe anything.
Yeah.
well, it is, but I think that's people's number one concern, is you're taking a lane away. So,
Even though it's not used.
Well, and the studies tend to only analyze car traffic sort of in a vacuum. They don't look at the trade-offs between
Right. Yep.
like providing more bus service and what that would do to car traffic.
Yeah.
They tend to not do that so much.
No, but they're looking at current conditions and saying, here's what we've got.
And they're
And then
assuming
they're
a
assuming-
baseline level of
Yes.
growth.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I think that your conversation about the different pieces of the benefits of bicycles is really good. I think that if you put it in the context of the Complete Streets policy and just Complete Streets, and that the reason this is a Complete Streets project, it's not just about bicycles, it's about all users, all user groups. And so I think that that's important to frame, if you're gonna, do a campaign on this, to frame it around the Complete Streets picture. So, because you brought it up, you talked about buses, you talked about pedestrians and vehicles. Most of us who live in Watertown do use Mount Auburn Street with a car as well. A lot of us do own cars and use Mount Auburn Street.
so I know there's a website and an organization out there called Smart Growth America, and they're kind of the big proponents for complete streets. Maybe that's going to find a lot of research or.
So
Yeah.
who can work on
Smart Growth
can you
America.
find some of that content? Or-
Yeah, Smart Growth America, I think they're like the big advocacy group. Is it?
There's tons of content
There's
out there.
tons of
Yeah, no, I got that, but I don't, but what I'm hoping is that we don't come here in August and then say, oh yeah, there's tons of content out there, but we still
Send that
have it.
next to-
Let's start sending it around so that we can look at it and
Yeah.
start putting it together between August and September.
Yeah.
All right.
Did Common Street come up?
No, this is not on.
It's a
there.
meeting
I know,
Wednesday on
I
Common
know.
Street.
No,
So
it's just
nothing's
listed
ever been
purely.
done with that?
There's a meeting, which meeting is it, Kitty? The DPW meeting?
Yeah, I just learned about it and I forwarded it to you today. At the same time, it's the same time as our planning board meeting, it's a DPW meeting, and there's quite a few things on the agenda, but one of those is the Common Street, on the DPW committee of the town council.
Going, you people who design Common Street, surely you would be.
Yeah.
Common Street.
Well,
No,
remember we
Wednesday
talked about
night.
Common Street at the last meeting, right?
Yeah, but is that off the table?
No, there's a meeting on
Yeah,
Wednesday.
so are people going?
Yeah, I'm gonna be late, I'm gonna try
I'm
to
gonna be out
go.
of time to try, I mean, I could try to make it, but I'm not sure I can. I'll be on the South Shore, I don't know if I can make it back in time.
Well, I think we've already said what we wanted to say on that, right?
Yeah, but
I know, I think we
haven't
have to
seen
go.
it.
will that be announced? I mean, will that be
I don't know.
mentioned?
Well, that's the whole reason, I mean, they're doing I think that the whole discussion is the redesign of Common. So they're addressing, they already, you had the meeting, they addressed it before, and I think it was referred to the DPW committee by the town council to be recommended back to the town council, so
Let's put,
I don't know what the status is of
I think
that.
people should be there.
Yeah.
okay, let's talk about common in new business. Hopefully we'll have time to talk about that. I want to talk next about iCubed. So, I think as everybody, I hope heard that the iCubed proposal passed, which means that, and Gideon will correct me if I'm wrong, so the town councilors voted in favor of approving the proposal for the Athena proposal for the $25 million in state funds for these various projects. The next step is to take it to the state with this application and hopefully get state funding. I think that application has to happen in the next, 6 months. Is that right, Gideon? That's happening pretty quickly.
Yeah, I don't know the exact timing, but I know it's soon.
Thanks. So, and it passed unanimously, which is great. I think they needed, I forget, 6, they needed 2/3 to pass, but it's better that it's unanimous, because that looks that much more compelling to the state.
So it was?
Yeah, it was unanimous. And they were, I was a little nervous when I listened to some of the town councilors' comments, because there was a lot of pushback based on the perception that Athena and other folks involved in the IQ proposal really haven't involved the town enough in the process.
And I would say that's absolutely true.
Exactly.
It may or may not be true. I mean, there were some pretty compelling arguments for I don't know. I mean, we didn't hear about it, so I guess that's pretty true. We weren't involved in the IQ process. But I didn't, as far as it being a good reason for not voting in favor of IQ, I didn't find that to be a compelling reason why it shouldn't be
Were you
voted.
at the first meeting when they introduced it?
No, I don't think so.
Oh, right, yeah.
No, but I mean, in looking at the projects that they want to do, they're all off of the master plan, and I think they're all, the majority of them, or the comprehensive plan, the majority of them are projects that we wanted to see happen for a long time, that it was just a question of the funding. So this is, it's wonderful.
Yeah, six or seven of them directly impact bike ped issues, 2 of them indirectly. And the last one, drainage and parking improvements. So the last one, I'm personally I'm a little concerned about is they're talking again about opening up Talcott Avenue.
The primary thing there is actually improving, repaving it and fixing the stormwater so that there's not those ruts. And as part of that, when we were discussing with them, there would be there's actually bicycle accommodations along that too, because It's,
But I think
it's a straight
Athena,
alignment.
Athena wants to open up Talcott, though, right? To access, I forget, it's open, it's accessing Greeno.
Greeno,
right?
North Beacon.
Yeah,
But for car traffic or for
yeah.
bike? Oh, really?
It's identified, but what Steve said is that it's highly unlikely that
Oh, is that right?
that component of it would be able to move forward.
Keep an eye on
It's a
it.
crazy intersection.
It
That would be.
it would be creating a fifth leg to the intersection. It's
That would-
on town parkland in control of the Conservation
Well,
Commission.
I would.
And the time frame is 3 years.
And the other thing is, there are other things, I mean, with the bike lane that we've done, funding on the community path through there.
Well, that's right. I mean, we've been going there for a while, and I think it was the line that DCR gave was, if you build it, we will come. Meaning, if you create this connection to the Charles, the DCR will create that path along the Charles, and we've done walkthroughs of that area, and there's proposals for what needs to get done. It's just a question of funding. But as Andy points out, that might be one of the things that less, that there's not a consensus that everybody would be in favor of it, and that's why I wanted to talk about, what's our role moving forward. Some of these things are projects that have been kind of designed and talked about and that we've been in favor of, and other ones like that Talcott Avenue, Greeno, North Beacon intersection are ones that we all know that area needs to be improved and could be a big improvement, but
That's
certainly not a
DCR.
consensus that opening Talcott is a good idea.
Yeah, but that's a DCR. That's, I mean.
Yeah, the entire intersection is in control of DCR too. I forgot to
Yeah.
add that fourth. There's the Conservation Commission, DCR.
But Talcott is what?
The Talcott is town property. It's
Oh,
not a
so
road.
you're saying the town doesn't want to open up Talcott?
I'm saying that it's unlikely to realign it into the park and open it up and get DCR to agree to it and build it in 3 years.
So can I speak to this?
Yeah.
All right, so all I did was what I thought the projects that directly impact the bike ped are in green. The thing to think about is those all have a 3-year timeline. And I think those are all projects that we want input on. So I'm not sure how we should stay on top of this going forward. Should we have specific people kind of, shepherding these things, or should we just?
I don't know. I'm open to any ideas.
Okay.
But I agree. This is going to happen very, very quickly.
Yeah.
And I think the town, again, there's been one of the problems is not enough involvement from the folks, the stakeholders, I guess, and members of the community. And so we want to make sure that our voice is heard, right?
We run a risk of something happening like with the Common Street project, where we see something, we like it, and then all of a sudden something changes and we miss it.
Yeah.
Can I just ask Talcott Avenue what we were talking about, like the first meeting I was here when we were talking about connecting?
Did you know where that is?
That's what I'm saying. But that's the same thing we were talking about, connecting the greenway to
Yes.
the.
Yeah, so they actually, so that's like bullet,
I was about to say that's what some of these things are. So like the parking improvement that will that on Talcott Avenue,
the
that,
Arsenal Park extension of the community path to the park, that's what we were talking about in the first meeting.
and with the stuff on Talcott, because we were talking about changing the parking spots around because they're like front in and out right now.
Well, am I
It's a little
right?
different.
Talcott Avenue is not a through street, right?
Not today.
It's at the south gate,
It just ends at that sort of shabby gate right
That
now.
blue
Yeah.
color.
the historic gate. It's on the list, it's on the national
What will
list.
be a beautiful
Yeah,
gate, but
it's-
right now has been allowed to follow the district.
It's exactly the same as when we got it.
Has a lot of potential.
It has a lot of potential, yeah. No, I mean, it's gonna be beautiful. Right now, it's not attraction.
And it's care.
So the first project, that's DOT, they just came up with the final recommendations, right? Arsenal Street?
Yeah, so MassDOT has a final series of alternatives. Not all of those would be implemented. Some of those things are not physical infrastructure improvements. So some of the MassDOT items and the alternatives, it's very unusual to have a MassDOT study that has a range of, 3, 5, 10 years, but you actually have funding to implement a substantial component of it.
But in almost
now.
all the alternatives are talking about widening sidewalks and formalizing a bike
Yeah,
lane.
so this would be upgrading Arsenal Street for the rest of it in keeping with the preferred alternatives of the mass test study and through the public process.
So I have a question about this. Is your office going to be working on an application to the state?
We've been working.
Oh, you've already?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's
We
not
don't-
like it's starting now, it's been working, yeah.
Yeah, but we don't necessarily have to have like complete designs for these projects in order to receive the
Yeah.
funding, right? I mean,
The projects need to be designed and built in 3 years.
oh, within 3, okay. So that gives us time to, like, it's not like we have to have
Yeah, so I
these
assume-
designs decided
So I
right now.
assume there'll be a public process and we'll
Yeah.
have, and maybe some of these pieces will be as one process and some of the pieces will be separate pieces. Some of them are in control of DCR only, some of them are in control of the town, some of them might be shared. And so it might be broken up into multiple pieces with different public processes identified for each component.
I think they better hire some more people.
And-
So it's just a lot of work. Let's hope for the best, because it'd be nice to get these things done.
Also, Athena's doing well financially, so what happens if they fall?
Get out.
Yeah, you get to keep the money.
It's
We
been
talked
discussed.
about that.
Yeah.
There are contingencies, yeah?
Yeah, whoever owned, if Athena went bankrupt and someone else bought the land, the project's transferred to the landowner. So they're on the hook, so to speak.
Well, that's what they say, but what would happen?
Yeah, I agree. Anytime you hear the words "no risk," to me,
Right.
that sets a red flag.
There's no money, there's no money.
But still, I mean, it's still 25.
Let's see how much we can get done before things get.
So I think
Yeah.
the most ambitious here is the Watertown Square re-engineering.
Yeah.
I think the relining Charles River Road so it doesn't come into the five-way intersection. But that's something where, if they do that, it's going to have to be done in 3 years. That's a pretty ambitious. I would-
We had a better idea with the pedestrian bridge.
Nice, but that would take,
They would do something big for the town instead of
that would take a big
Some
chunk.
people don't like bridges for pedestrians.
But
But something like that, I think that as they go along, it would behoove us to kind of stay abreast of what's going on, because I can see where, as they get
Yes.
closer and closer to the deadline,
Need you.
they're just going to want to put it in there, so.
I totally agree with you. I think,
Yeah.
realigning those roads, I mean, at first blush, I'm in favor of it in Watertown Square, but I mean, that's a potentially has big implications that takes a lot more than just an initial impression to evaluate and take a stance on.
It takes substantially more analysis than they've done. They haven't even done a survey yet to make sure that what they, that was basically a cartoon of what could work as a better option for all users in the square. And so the next step would be to take that through a design process and see
Yeah.
what you can actually do.
So Gideon, what's the best way for us to stay abreast of what's going on with the projects on IQ? I mean,
So I think that if I can, provide, I'm assuming we're going to have a public process that's identified, and then we'll be able to provide updates, and those updates will either have a notification system, or I'll be able to provide you with information as it moves along in the process. We haven't worked that out yet, because we're still in that stage where we're finalizing the agreements, as Andy was at the meeting.
So let me ask you, so for these projects, are they going to be soliciting public input at some point, like they do with
Yeah,
most
that's what I
projects?
said, yeah,
Okay.
yeah, public, that's what I meant.
Okay.
So it has to be developed for each project or combined into, some projects can be together.
Some of these, like the Arsenal Park one, do they need to go through a whole public process since that's been worked on for so long? Could potentially.
That has
proceed?
to actually, it needs public, so we're actually in
because
so we're in the process of starting the Arsenal Park process, and we have to, we have a date potentially set for a first public meeting, but the Conservation Commission has to approve any changes to Arsenal Park.
Okay,
So that's a public process.
got it.
Like, there's no,
Yeah.
they can say no to any change,
Okay.
or yes, or anything else, so. So this could be done side by side with, at the same time as the design process for the park, or it could be separately designed, but part of me with the plan wants to see it done cohesively, so.
I just like to ask, just what I asked Ethan, but it seems the stuff that runs over that Talcott connecting the Greenway and stuff, we had a meeting here, we sat down and talked with the person from the Liverpool Streets Alliance, who gave us
Yeah.
input and feedback, and it seems to connect with some of those things or run over some of those things.
Yeah,
And they could be a central point to help us.
There's sort of two issues that converge on Talcott. Number
Yeah.
one is, we have the existing greenway with the spur that comes out of
Right,
Arsenal.
right.
And so, as they redo Arsenal Yards, I think getting it was a big factor in establishing a dedicated bike path into the park. Now, once it gets into the park, the town, and that's what you were just talking about, is the series of meetings, they're going to redesign Arsenal Park so that
Right.
there'll be a bike path that takes you right to the gatehouse at Talcott Road. The other issue we're talking about is Athena, as part of the project, they want to open up Talcott Street to
Right.
traffic. So
Yeah.
there's kind of two issues that kind of converge there.
For sure, yeah, the last two seem to be right in terms of what we were talking about
Yeah.
before. And I just know she had done some work to liaise with
Yeah.
Yeah, that
between
was the first issue.
stakeholders and you know, Talcott in terms of parking on
Yeah.
Talcott, which I see here.
I think
and
we're
the
still-
parking.
When you were talking about the parking, I got confused, because I think what we were talking about primarily was the parking on the Arsenal Now Yards site, adjacent to Harvard Vanguard.
Right, okay.
Talcott also has parking, but it's a different type of issue.
It just seems, yeah, I just don't want to like,
For the park.
when we've gone through a whole process of having,
In the mansion.
There's a sign that says no parking
Yeah,
for most of
we
it.
talked this,
we've talked it over and there seems to run a rough shot over the top of something when we've already had discussions with all the people involved, and it just seems, I'm fine if this pushes it through.
Yeah.
But we should already have some record trace of discussion around what is the best process
Yeah.
around these specific, i.e. Talcott and the Arsenal Park
yeah.
development
Is
process.
anything going to happen? I mean, because right now, I would think with I cubed is the next step is put in whatever the application is to the state. While they're doing that, is anything going to change with these designs or move forward or?
I don't think so.
I guess the
think
question
that
is there anything we need to keep up on?
I mean, all the work that Athena's done so far is out of their pocket, and it could all just go away if it doesn't get finalized with the state.
Yeah.
So if you do too much, so the mitigation, they've been working on implementing what was approved for the planning board from, and they said that at the IQ meeting, from Louise Street to School Street to the north. So that's implementing that. So that has to happen either way for the garage to open. So that design is, and it's implementing exactly what they had shown to the process. And that actually extends the greenway right to the school street crossing. So because the billboard got removed, so they can get cleaned up there, things like that are moving forward.
So we-
Design-wise, so they're basically at a.
So the next step of the process is this list is submitted to the state with the application, and they go through and they say, this is viable, this is viable, this is viable, this is not.
Yeah, my understanding is that they've already provided some of that.
But when the application comes back, if it's approved, then the next step is to start to design, to expand the design.
I mean, I think Athena has made an effort to make these projects such that they're likely to be approved by the state.
Right. And it's a partnership with the state as well, because a lot of the improvements are on state property.
As Andy said, Talcott Ave seemed to be one that Athena really wanted. They made that clear. Are there any others that you think Athena's really going to push forward as much as they can?
Talcott Avenue seems like the one that's not just beautification, they want it to
They
get
had
people
a-
in and out of the campus.
Yeah, it was strategic for them,
Yeah.
I think.
I agree.
And
But it's the least, it has no detail. It's the least,
Yeah.
actually, so it's the opposite of what you're saying. The master plan that was removed from the master plan, it's not in the traffic study
Huh.
for their approval.
So they haven't done any of.
So so they had some initial ideas about it, and they put it in the IQ, and it's not in any of the approved planning documents for the master plan for Arsenal and Charles. And so of these, the rest have tangible documentation and public processes, and it's implementing suggestions of the town and the corridor. That one was something that they had identified as a potential option.
Okay.
But there are barriers, so I've already said there's barriers to that.
It was interesting, though. I think Jesse, you're pointing out the fact that Jacob Scott, the ins and outs
Attorney.
counsel, he said this is very important to Athena when asked. So they're going to keep pushing for it.
It's similar, actually. I'll mention the MassDOT study, and I said there was substantial barriers. They identified as an alternative a realignment for Coolidge Avenue that would come out at Little Reno. Little Reno is the smaller part that we're talking about. It's not on any map, but that's what people want to call it.
They wanted Coolidge to come out somewhere different.
So it's the last alternative, and it would go across state property, and it would cut through private property. It's substantial cost, and the viability of that would be very difficult to implement. So it's the same kind of thing. It's something that someone thinks might work well for something, but it may not be feasible for various reasons.
Maybe they were just testing the waters when they put it out there.
Well, that's the kind of thing that we should keep track of, I guess. All right. I guess so. There's not anything to keep track of right now, but I'm glad that we talked about this just moving forward. And Andy, thank you for putting this together. It's really helpful.
Yeah, it's a 3-year timeline, so it's going to happen quick and fast.
It's going to be fast.
Although that little kayaking for that can't happen fast enough. I think that's going to be awesome. All right, next on the agenda, Citizens Police Academy is starting in September. I just want to put this all on your radar.
Anything on the calendar?
Well, so first of all, who is interested in doing it? Is anybody interested in doing it? I think it would be, I'm interested in doing it, but.
Remind us what it is.
Yes.
Yeah, what I need to, like, instead of was.
Let's read right from the website, okay? So it's to give the public a working knowledge of the Watertown Police Department's policies and procedures through a series of classes instructed by Watertown Police Department personnel. It's designed as a help improve police community relations. The more information the public has about their police department, the less suspicions, fears, and misconceptions will exist. Many conflicts are caused simply by a lack of understanding, and these can be avoided. The motto of the Citizen Police Academy is understanding through education. Participants meet once per week for 10 consecutive weeks. That's actually pretty significant. Yeah. The sessions will be held, I don't know what time, but will be held at the Watertown Police Department located at 34 John Sunny Woolley Way. Instruction is designed to be appealing to participants with lectures, tours, demonstrations, and hands-on practice.
That's funny that they said John Sunny Woolley Way.
Well, Woolley is in.
No, because
Sunny is not Woolley.
that's the old.
That's the old.
That's the old police station address.
Let me make sure I haven't Googled and gotten the wrong one.
Here's the old website.
What is the old address being used for? What is old address being used for?
I just Googled, I saw it in the paper, and I just
Animal
Googled it.
control,
Just
I think. Animal control use.
Yeah, that's true.
I think
They
they
heard the raccoon.
lock up stray animals in the old cells, I think.
Raccoons in there with tin cups.
Yeah.
If you Google it, you'll find other articles about it. But so when I met with Sergeant Sampson a couple times, one of the things that he mentioned was, you have the opportunity, I think, to do kind of like a ride-along, where you can see what car stops are like, or what kind of enforcement issues police are looking at, and what sort of, a lot of it tends to be subjective in terms of, whether they issue a citation or what other types of police action are taken. So it can be helpful to get an understanding, particularly for we as a committee. One of the issues we want to look at, and should be looking at, is what are the police doing to make the streets safer for other alternative users of the roads, and what kinds of enforcement actions are being taken if and when there are accidents, and how are accidents being investigated. And so what they've said is that they're taking it very seriously, so there's certainly no assumption in the Watertown Police Department if there's an accident involving a cyclist, bike and a car, that, the bike shouldn't be on the road. They certainly know that's not the case, and they'll be investigating it. But, the more we can understand and the more we can gain a perspective of how the police are viewing things, and also perhaps share what our perspective might be, I think the better. So that's kind of the point of it.
Yeah, they're planning on having that like nights or weekends? or is it
I
during
didn't
the
see that in
workday?
what I just looked at. I hope it's, I can't, if they,
If they want people to come, hopefully they will do.
yeah, because otherwise they're gonna get basically the unemployed, or the retired, you know what I mean? It's like in the middle of the
Who's got
workday.
that kind of time?
Yeah, so hopefully it's reasonably flexible, I don't know, 10 straight weeks is a lot of time.
Yeah. And do you know, you read what was available, but do you know if there's a cost associated with it?
I don't, but I'd be willing to bet that
It
there's
says
no
right
cost.
here between 3,100 and 3,500, that's the cost of town, and they're running it in the fall.
Yes, we're running in the
So-
fall. I think it's in September, beginning in September.
But how do you
But
sign up?
still, they only
There's an
have a limited
application.
amount, right? So probably you have to
I think they'd be
apply.
very happy to have some of the folks from the committee on.
Okay.
Is there anybody that might be able to do it?
Report back if I find more details.
That's
Somebody
something.
to say.
There's an article in the tab too about it.
Yeah, if you Google it, you'll
This
see there are a lot of
article-
attempts. This is not the first time they've done it. So,
No,
which is good. So
they
you can get
stopped
the-
in 2008, it says.
Oh, I thought they did one last year.
They did, the first time.
So, for those folks who are interested and inclined and have the time, let's do it. I've done ride-alongs before, but I was looking at, I was with a different eye. I don't think we're lucky that we here in Watertown, I think the issues in Watertown we're not as much focused on things like excessive force. I don't think that's as much of an issue here as probably, some of the priority police issues here are things like traffic enforcement, opioid epidemic, things like that.
The issue of
We're lucky
It
police.
said 22 students, and it was 8 weeks.
Back then.
Well, no, that's
All right,
last
anybody,
year.
new business, we were talking about, what was the thing that we were talking about a moment ago that I said I want, Common Street, that I want to put on a new business?
Yeah, because it's Wednesday.
All right,
I just wanted to be clear that because it's new business, you can't take any actions on it.
So all we can do is bring it up.
Yeah.
you can talk about it.
So there's a meeting on Wednesday. Where? When?
Thanks, Jim.
I sent it out by email, but I actually,
Here, right?
Which one? Yeah, 6 o'clock downstairs.
6 p.m.
That's what it says on the.
is it DPW or
The
here?
one with it.
What is it?
So,
But, so,
is that the one we're talking
Yeah,
about?
what's
Oh,
the
no,
meeting?
not that.
It's the town council committee on DPW,
Yeah.
Committee on Public Works.
on Public
Yeah.
Works.
6 p.m. Philip Payne Lower Conference.
So that's the lower hearing room where you typically meet, and it's at 6 o'clock.
well, it'd be great if at least one member of the committee could be there to
I'll be there.
make sure that the positions that we raised in our prior correspondence to them about Common Street are not forgotten.
They're gonna be discussing Common Street, is that, that's what's on the agenda?
Yeah, there's several items on the agenda, and that's, I think, the
And I'm forgetting, one of the things we had suggested was to create that sort of wayfinding to direct folks to, I forget the name.
Marshall Street.
Yeah, Marshall Street.
With all that in a minute.
Are you gonna be there?
I can't get here in time.
I see.
That's too bad.
Oh, we can put it down, yes.
Yeah.
And then they came in
But
and,
my
yeah.
wish is really just to make sure they do the wayfinding and to have some kind of a protected turn
Get that.
on that right turn.
This week,
Or
I
at
saw
least some way of making a
I
right
saw some guy
clear.
get hit by a car this week on a bike.
Who?
It was in Boston. It was, do you know the Fiedler Footbridge?
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
So you're supposed to walk across the Fiedler Footbridge, but not everybody does, but
Yeah.
I try to. And so I was actually walking, well, I sort of ride, and if there's nobody on it, I ride, but if there's
Yeah.
anybody on it, then I get off. So I'm walking, and this guy goes by me a little bit faster, we're sort of thinking he's going a little fast. And then I continued to walk, and then as you're getting down, I got back on my bike, and as I was going, I heard the screech of the tires and the thud. And he was okay. I think I don't know if he digged up his arm
Where did he get hit?
So he went through there, and then there's an intersection right
Yes.
there of, to
Yeah,
Beacon, yeah.
that's
And what I think happened, I didn't see it, but based on how sort of, I mean, I made note of him going a little bit faster than, based
Yeah.
on the footbridge. I think he went into that intersection, saw the cars were stopped, but those cars can have a red light, but there can be a green for a right turn. I think he probably went into the intersection a little bit faster than he might have. And I think at the same time, there was a car coming into the intersection that was sensing, oh, if I don't go quickly through this intersection, I may not catch this green right turn arrow, and I think that's what happened.
Yeah.
He was okay, I mean, when I got there, I mean, it was kind of, that guy just passed me, like I'm thinking, that guy just passed me 10 seconds ago.
Yeah.
So he rode across it.
So he rides across, and then he might have been in the crosswalk when he got hit. I don't know if
Yeah,
he's in
that's
the
really
crosswalk.
dangerous.
I didn't see it. And it's one of those things where, as a cyclist, you may be in the right technically, but you could be right and hit by a car.
No,
So
that
what you
you
want
have
to
to
do is,
look at the pedestrian crossing signals at that intersection.
and you also have to
if
look
you
at the
try to aim
traffic.
it.
You got to look at the cars and look at them and
Yeah,
are they
because
stopped?
people are coming off.
So I
Shore
suspect that he did not do that again. I didn't see it, so I don't know. I mean, I thought about waiting there for a second as a witness, and then I was like, I didn't see anything. But I asked the driver was, was clearly shaken up. I mean, just nervous. He was fine. But he started to pull away, and so then the cyclist was yelling at him, don't go, don't go. But he was just trying to get out of the intersection. It was like some 20-something-year-old guy with a kid and a baby seat in the back. It was just a bummer. And then the guy who got hit, his bike was messed up, and he looked like his arm was in a lot of pain.
It's just a horrible intersection. I go by
It is
there
a
every
horrible
day.
intersection. I go by it every day too.
And
I
the
avoid
problem
it.
is the way that that's set up, that you can't tell when you're waiting that the right hand still has the right turn signal. So
Because the
you
cars are
Fix
stopped.
that? Can you think of a way to fix that?
thought
they
they were
need
working
to
on
change the light,
I don't know.
make it more visible to the
I
people
get off on
waiting
the
there.
pedestrian bridge before that one, and then just come down Palm Ave.
And then
really
come
long
down, come out, that's,
Palm Ave's got a great bike lane on the inside,
Yes.
along the mall.
Because I get off there and then I ride on the sidewalk along the public garden and then I go up.
Yeah, I get off the pedestrian bridge
Yeah.
before that, that takes you on onto
Clarendon.
Clarendon, and then I
Yep.
take a left on a Palm Ave onto the bike lane.
Oh,
It's
that's
funny,
an
I
idea.
try to walk
wish-
my bike over the Fiedler Footbridge in part. Now there's signs. There used to be only a sign on one side that said walk your bike, and on the other you might have sort of plausible deniability. But the truth is, you get the stink eye from pedestrians if you're on your bike, and I don't know, I think that cyclists, it's a good idea to try to be a good kind of cycling ambassador. So unless it's, a single jogger or something like that, if I see somebody pushing a stroller or an elderly couple or three people walking abreast, I get off my bike and walk it.
My only
Yeah.
thought is, people don't realize that when you get off your bike and you walk it, you take
You're
more
taking-
space.
Yeah.
I thought about that.
It's actually, because I've done the same thing, I've had the same question,
I've had the
which
same
is,
thought.
do I go very slowly and be on my bike?
I just
or do
decided- I
get
got
off
tired
and
of
take
getting-
us
I have
two
thought about
people's
that.
worth of space?
I got tired of getting the stink eye from people. I do it every day, so I just decided to
Encountering bicycles when you're on foot, it can be
Can
daunting, regardless of how much control the bicycle is, because then you don't, as a pedestrian, know
Right.
whether this person's on their third day biking or.
Yeah.
I think that's right. People
No,
get
but
really helpful.
I'm taking your route from now on.
Yeah.
I'm gonna
I'm
get
always
off
thinking
my
of
foot.
efficiency.
Any other new business items?
Can I bring up one thing?
Yeah.
Because I don't know the process for this, but it's just something that we may want to look at. Because I live on Gilbert Street, in between Highland and Main Street. Highland is a nightmare to walk on. I know we don't necessarily, we spend more time doing cycling than pedestrian. This might be a good opportunity for something for us to stick our head in. But the pavement, the sidewalks on Highland is a parking lot.
Where is Highland?
It's actually a back route to the, to
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's what made me think it's a route to school.
It's a-
There's a lot of kids walk up and down
And
there
they park on the
on
sidewalk
the sidewalk because
Because there's no
Highland
curb?
people, there's no curb and people bomb up and
because they
down.
have no grass strips.
People bomb
No,
up
it
and down
isn't even
Highland.
that, it's that people drive so fast, so people tend to go to the side more, which then of course
There's no
takes
granite
more
curb either.
space.
Right.
Yeah,
There's no plan.
yeah, because people drive by them.
Is there a plan in the town to like
Really?
put granite curbs on all?
Yeah, when it's a full depth reconstruction, the policy is that you put in a granite curb and a
They
planter
could
strip.
serve it.
But
So
what
they can
does
put
that
in water,
mean?
gas, sewer, is that what a full
Yeah.
depth reconstruction?
Well, on a road that isn't just being milled and overlaid, if the road is too deteriorated to be rehabbed, they have to do a full depth reconstruction. Ask Maria how
Come
fun
to
they
my
are.
house.
Well, they've just been
You'll see
doing,
it all.
they've just been
Why,
doing
they've
pipe
done that
work.
at your
Now,
house?
I wanted,
So that might be the sign that they're trying to get the things done. So
Yeah, I don't know if it is or isn't. I don't know if this is a personal gripe or something we can stick our head in, but it's,
Well, I
it's
can-
a route to school, and
I
I
can
can't.
ask the status. They have a list of.
But
The other day I couldn't
people
get-
are
It
parking
can, it can
on
be
them.
both a personal gripe and I mean.
Oh, yeah.
and
I
you
couldn't
can
get
make
it.
a complaint.
Yeah, I couldn't get a stroller down
Parking.
there to save my
Right,
life the other day.
if people are parking on the sidewalk, though, you can report it.
Yeah, so you can actually report it to our department, to Tony.
What a team.
Yeah, you can
I'm
send it to
reporting.
The problem is
You can
reporting
send, you
something
can
like
email,
that.
no, email it to me
I
if
can
you see
imagine.
cars parked on the sidewalk.
I've got pictures.
As long as there are
Yeah.
curbs,
Take
as long as there's
pictures.
no
No, I
curb,
have
no,
the
it's
same
just gonna
problem
be
with
faster.
pictures.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just, the cars have to be there when you report it.
But I live
For
on
them
a street
to be-
where there's
they get-
church.
It's illegal. You can't park. in the-
My guess is like I'm not gonna be able to like
Yeah.
take a walk at 7 o'clock, catch a picture, send it to you, you'll
That's
pop
my
in there.
plan, and
So I do have
Sort it out.
Oh, yeah, one more thing.
I do have a question about a couple of meetings. So there's a planning board meeting tomorrow as well, and I think,
Wednesday, yeah.
and there was something bicycle or pedestrian related that they were going to figure out.
There was?
There's only one project. It's Arsenal Yards Phase 2.
Okay.
And it includes the connection from Arsenal Street to Arsenal Park.
And you have an update on that?
And they have updated the plans from the phase to include a 3-foot landscape buffer adjacent to the garage,
So it pulls the bike lane away from the garage by 3 feet.
so that there's now room for your handlebars. So it's really, it's a major improvement for the bicycle connection to the park. And how they did it was they moved the parking on the Harvard Vanguard side in. They didn't turn it parallel, but they were able to move it into the Harvard Vanguard site. So it's a complicated process, but they
Good work, Gideon.
got it through.
It's a two-way
Now
path.
we just go connect
Yeah.
it to the rest of us.
And so that's making the connection from the spur to the park. So that's a critical connection, and it was all on their property. Their plans had included the crossing, to rebuild the crossing from the spur across Arsenal Street, but their mitigation could be shifted because of the iCube funding, which would, the iCube funding would become a cohesive project for the entire corridor instead of it being done by piecemeal, by the different developments.
So that's a good thing.
Yeah.
So last question, on Thursday, there's a historical committee meeting. I looked at the agenda, they're going to talk about the White House again.
Yeah.
Does anybody need to be there, or is it just kind of a procedural?
They could choose to vote and have a delay put on the House, but I
That
don't. But as you know, you went to the last meeting, what they want to know is there some reason that it should not be deemed historically significant or deemed historically significant? It doesn't matter what the use is or whether, so that they'll make that decision. They're doing a site visit that I coordinated, and I'm representing the town for the demolition.
But at worst, it's a year delay, and that doesn't impact us.
Yeah, it would be a minimal impact for town.
Those are the 2 emails that you sent this morning, is that right? That's the, I'm sorry, that Gideon sent, that you're referencing those 2 things. Because if I remember correctly, there was already a meeting about that house, right? And we were urged to go. I couldn't
And you
attend,
went.
I wasn't, yeah.
Yeah.
And I ended up representing
Is
the
there-
town.
Did
is
you
there
speak
people-
up? Did you have to?
Did I?
No,
I
you-
did. No, I did.
Oh, yeah, you did.
Something, yeah.
You did.
I think that they suggested that there was some historical significance to it, so they wanted to take a tour.
Yep. David Russo is the chair, and he did some research and discovered that the house was built in 1862 or 63. It's been a rental house almost its entire life. Mary Louise McDermott's family bought it something like in the 20s.
Is that a name that we should know?
She's the chair of the Conservation Commission. So, yeah, I mean, so it's got some history, but integrity-wise, and the people up on the hill rented it. And I suspect it's going off. That was the rail corridor, and I suspect that they might have built it to create a buffer between their nice houses up on the hill and the railroad. And they rented it it was worker housing.
So weren't they going to look at selling the house to move?
They requested that if that would be an option.
Yeah.
And I mean, if they can find someone that would be interested, but they're going to take a site visit and look at.
Would you say they want to move the house?
One option they thought about was offering the house for sale if somebody would move it.
For basically, for $1.
Well, but that might be interesting, yes.
Well, they already did that once, didn't they? They mentioned that they had done that
I
before.
first had to find a lot.
They've actually mentioned that it didn't work in Belmont. They moved the house to public property in Belmont. It sat there and it deteriorated after they moved it forever. They couldn't find a property for it. No one wanted it. And it was actually a really significant house, unlike this house,
No, I
which
guess I think the last.
has some interesting history, but it's.
I know the house is
Well,
on
what
the
is it,
street.
is it architecturally interesting inside? Did you agree
From what
with
I
that?
remember.
They thought they talked about a
We're
couple
doing a
elements. David Rousseau and a couple other people kind of
Yeah.
mentioned some details about the house that they thought were unique and made it historical.
I just wondered if the CPA bought it for a low-income family, fixed it up as a,
Well, it's in the way.
That's what the point is, we want to.
No, I mean, moved it.
Moved it.
moved it to a,
There's no property right now.
Property limited to.
That's true, there's no land at all.
But I mean, that's why I think it would be.
Yeah, it might be cheaper to build something than to move an old house and then fix it up for a new family.
It doesn't meet codes for modern codes, so oftentimes when you move a house, you have to bring it all the way up because you've spent a certain amount of money. So you have to gut it and then.
Yeah.
I think I read some article, there's some house, I forget where, that's historically significant, they're selling it for $1 to whoever wants to move it. There's no takers.
But it is interesting, and yeah, so they'll take a tour of it and then they'll deliberate on that, as well as quite a few other items.
Yeah. But we're hoping that we want the path to move forward.
Yeah.
Okay, anybody else have anything they want to talk about? All right. We're adjourned.